This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And as always, I am your host, Jesse Tapia. Alright, so it's Tuesday, and we didn't get to cover this yesterday, but Johnny Manziel played football for the first time last Friday. Didn't really look too good. We're going to be talking about that for this first segment, give my thoughts on it, and as far as what this does to Johnny Manziel's comeback to get back into the NFL. Second segment, we'll head over to the MLB, got some stuff to talk about there. Yankees ended up, if I'm not mistaken, winning yesterday against the Chicago White Sox. So like I said, we'll be talking about that along with anything else going on in the MLB. Third segment, Browns traded away Corey Coleman yesterday to the Bills for a 7th-round pick. Seems like the word around camp has been that Antonio Callaway has been playing really well. Looking like he's kind of the one who forced Coleman out, meaning he's just played well enough to the point where you got to put him on the field. And then today we were notified that he was cited on Sunday for marijuana possession and driving with a suspended license. So I got some things to say about that. Also going to talk more about the Coleman trade, give my thoughts on it after the first day happened. And then for the fourth segment, we will be talking about anything else going on in the world of sports. So that's how today's show is going to go. So let's get it started with this Johnny football stuff. So as we know, Johnny Manziel, great Texas A&M quarterback, got drafted in the first round by the Browns, I think with the 21st, 26th pick or something like that. Plays a couple seasons there. Doesn't really look too great. Hugh Jackson comes in, doesn't want Johnny Manziel, cuts him, and Johnny Manziel's been out the NFL since. Last season being 2015. Johnny Manziel, I guess, has dealt with substance abuse issues and all that. Also some mental health issues, and now is trying to make his comeback. Obviously, getting to the NFL is going to be a bit more difficult, but he found his way to the CFL. Ended up signing with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Turns out their quarterback was actually pretty good for a CFL quarterback, so he didn't lose his starting job. And Johnny Manziel was then traded to the Montreal Alouettes. Manziel sits the first game because he just barely got there. Second game he starts, and that's against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, his former team. Mind you, the Montreal Alouettes are one of the worst teams in the CFL. I think they actually might be the worst, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats, I think, are one of the best. So you figure, we're here sitting at the TV, all excited because Johnny Manziel's back playing football. Let's see if he could work his magic, see what he could do against the CFL players. They're not NFL players, so he's going to do pretty good, right? Nope, he was pretty bad, I'd say. In that game against the Tiger Cats, I believe he left mid-third quarter. He completed 55% of his passes for 104 yards and 4 interceptions. Yeah, yikes. I mean, it wasn't great. You could tell. Well, one of the interceptions wasn't his fault because of the fact that it hit off of the receiver's hands. And as far as his performance, like I said, it wasn't great. Johnny Manziel didn't look good. He showed flashes of the old Johnny football, but for the most part, struggled to connect with his receivers. And, I mean, when you're playing on a bad team, it's going to show, and it showed. So the game ends. Like I said, they got absolutely blown out. It was 28-0 or 7, I think, after the first. It was ridiculous. Montreal stood absolutely no shot in this game whatsoever. Johnny Manziel could have played like how he did at A&M, and it wouldn't have mattered because the players there aren't really good at all. So, I mean, you could have two takes on this. You could have the take of course, I knew Johnny Manziel couldn't do it. Now he's playing in the CFL and he threw 4 interceptions. He's never getting back into the NFL. He's no good. Or you could look at it in a way where the guy only had a couple practices with Montreal before that game. Was recently traded the week before. Let's not forget that the CFL has different rules than the NFL. Their end zones are longer, wider, whatever you want to call it. They only play 3 downs, so if you don't convert the first on second, you got to punt on third, unless, of course, you want to go for it. Your receivers, tight ends can move all over the place before the ball snaps. There's no false start or anything like that as far as them moving around, meaning they can pretty much line up 10 yards behind the quarterback and do a full sprint as the ball's getting hiked. Just don't be offsides. So there's stuff like that. And like I said, I mean, this is one of the worst teams in that league. And when you give Johnny Manziel only a couple of practices to work there, especially after he hasn't played a football game since 2015, it's not going to be easy. So I do give Johnny Manziel a pass here. And like I said, Johnny Manziel did show flashes of the old Johnny football. On one of his interceptions, as bad as that sounds, looked like he was going to get sacked. I mean, he got away from everyone there. Ended up throwing it deep when in reality he probably could have just thrown it to one of the guys right next to the first down line. But he throws it deep. That gets picked. But like I said, I mean, as far as him moving around the pocket, being elusive from the defensive tackles and defensive ends and all that, I mean, he looked all right. And I might just be grasping for straws here. I do enjoy watching Johnny Manziel play football. But like I said, I'm not going to go out and say that this is what's going to keep him from being out of the NFL this game. I've always said that if Johnny Manziel was ever going to make it back, he probably has about a 2-year window to do that. So, I mean, it's not like he has to get back this very year. And even I'd say right now he's probably, 26? He's probably got 3 years. As long as he gets in before being 29, I think he'd be fine. So, I'm sure Johnny Manziel's going to spend a couple of seasons in the CFL. I think this has got to be a long-term type project for him. I don't think that the NFL is something remotely possible for him right now, just given that he's got to show what he can do in the CFL. He's got to start winning not even winning ball games, but just playing well, because I highly doubt that NFL scouts are going to care what his team record is. As long as the guy's playing well, like let's say he's putting up 32 points, the defense is giving up 33, he'll get a shot, I think. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, the CFL debut wasn't great. But I will say this also. CFL, it's some pretty good quality football, dare I say it. I mean, you got guys who played at D1 schools, top D1 schools, to guys who couldn't cut it in the NFL. So, I mean, it's not like... And when I say couldn't cut it in the NFL, I'm meaning guys who maybe played a couple of years there, guys who at least got some training camp invites, so it's guys who got talent. And like I said, it is very entertaining. It's not, and when I say the rules are different, it's not like it's a completely different game from the NFL or anything like that. Like, they're still playing football. The fan atmospheres are pretty cool, too. Montreal ended up selling out that game. I'm curious to see if Montreal sells out their next game or if the Montreal fans have already given up on Johnny football. Because, I mean, you could tell how hyped up they were for that game because you had ESPN showing them all during the pregame and all that. Everyone had their Johnny Manziel football jerseys. But, like I said, not really what they expected. And let me see if I can pull up Johnny Manziel's when his next game will be. And, like I said, I mean, I don't really think this is a game where you, come to a conclusion that, yeah, Johnny Manziel doesn't have it anymore. Give the guy some more time. And I'd say that he'll get better. I think he'll definitely get better. The guy knows how to play the quarterback position. I will say this, one thing that did hurt him over at Texas A&M was that Kevin Sumlin gave him way too much freedom, meaning the way they ran that offense as far as if your first option's not there, then do whatever you can to get us a first down, didn't really help Johnny Manziel too much. And Johnny Manziel's talked about that in numerous interviews and all that. So, I mean, what can you do there? Also, some things never changed. Mike Sherman's the head coach of that Montreal team. The same way he was calling questionable plays over in Miami as the offensive coordinator is the same thing that's happening with Montreal. I honestly just don't think Mike Sherman's that great of a coach. I mean, you could tell with that Montreal team, some of the plays they were running weren't working out. I mean, it was a bit ridiculous. That whole team is in shambles, I'd say. That's how bad they are. They have one win this season, and even I followed a couple CFL reporters to see pretty much to follow what they think of Johnny Manziel and all that, but they were talking about how Montreal getting that one win was kind of a shocker. So the guy, like I said, doesn't have much to work with, but he's going to have to get better if he ever wants to make it back into the NFL. So we'll see what ends up happening, but we're going to wrap it up here. Next up, we're going to be talking about the MLB, so stay tuned, and I will be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We spent that first segment talking about Johnny Manziel and his CFL debut. Only completed 55% of his passes for about 104 yards and 4 interceptions. No touchdowns there from him. Not great. Not a great debut at all. I mean, plenty of eyeballs on him. I'm sure the ratings were pretty good for that game, but it's going to be a long-term process for Johnny Manziel to ever make it back into the NFL. He had a real good first opportunity getting drafted in the first round. Didn't make the most of it. So now, like I said, he's probably going to have to spend a couple years in the CFL before any NFL team really looks at him, at least seriously enough to think of signing him. So, like I said, we talked about that. We'll see how it goes for him. But either way, now we move on to the MLB, where the Yankees were the story for Monday. They were coming off a 4-game sweep, getting swept by the Red Sox in 4 games. A's also swept the Tigers over the weekend, so that kind of narrowed the gap as far as the first wild card spot. Yankees still maintaining that spot, but only 2.5 games up heading into yesterday. So like I said, story was on them. Haven't been playing well. Been real. I think they're 18-20. Well, before yesterday, they were 18-20 in their last 38 games, pretty much playing like a poor team. So, I mean, you're looking to see what they do heading into Chicago, playing the White Sox, and I mean, it went about as well as it possibly could. Lance Lynn pitched a little over 7 innings, only gave up 2 hits, had 9 strikeouts. They recently traded for Lynn over the trade deadline. Lynn is the guy who basically forced Sonny Gray out to the bullpen. And I mean, if this is Sonny Gray's replacement, the Yankees got to be the happiest team in the world. Because Sonny Gray was going out there pitching about 4 or 5 innings at most, giving up however many runs he could in that time. And you knew every time Sonny Gray pitched for the Yankees, it was a guaranteed loss for that team. If you get Lance Lynn coming in, obviously he's not going to keep throwing a bunch of shutout innings or whatever, but if he's only giving up about 1 to 2 runs, giving you about 6 to 7 innings a game, you're going to take that and you are going to run away with it. So, obviously a great start by him. And looking at them, they did put up 7 runs, beat the White Sox, like I said, 7-0. Let's see, you had Gleyber Torres went 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs. Didi Royes had 2 hits, had a 1 RBI. Hicks went 2 for 5, had an RBI also, and then you had Neil Walker went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs there. Let's see, how did Stan do? Stan went 0 for 3, got walked twice, did score a run there. So, overall, real solid performance by the Yankees. The White Sox, I mean, they're just a bad team. I think they're 41-71 right now. Obviously, nothing to talk about as far as they go. But like I said, right now, the Yankees are basically trying to pick themselves up. I think that the AL East is out the question now.